morning. This is Marivir Montebon here in Conversations with MM. Hope everybody's doing well. It's a Monday, it's sunny, it's a wonderful spring day. And we have a very important topic conversation today regarding scamming. This is one of the major public concerns here in the US and worldwide because people are making a profession out of scamming. Scamming is when you are being ripped off of your hard earned money, you are being fooled. So don't be fooled. Recently, we attended a forum, a media forum organized by the Ethnic Media Services, which is based in California. And we have this valuable information for you to not be scammed. And it is important to know that social media has become a very big platform for scammers. So we give you tips on how to avoid it. But first, let me share with you the forum, which was attended by officials of the Federal Trade Commission, the government agency that is providing services on consumer rights and benefits, and they are also after scammers. So here, let's take a listen at the executive director of Ethnic Media Services, Sandy Close, and the FTC Commissioner, Maria Mayo. Let's take a listen.
My favorite annual briefings, when we get to hear from the FTC about the hottest scams of 2022 and the ones that cost us the most in hard-earned money, literally went down the drain. And also, I have to say, the FTC has been a great partner with Ethnic Media Services and all our ethnic media colleagues since 2015. We've done on-site briefings in over 32 cities. We're about to do one in San Francisco for Bay Area, especially AAPI communities and scams on March 30th. So welcoming the FTC to this Zoom briefing to report on their annual data book findings is both a great pleasure and a real honor. So what were the hottest frauds in 2022, according to the FTC's latest annual data book? How much did American consumers lose from scams? And when I say consumers, I also include small businesses. What role did social media play? The numbers are intriguing and surprising, especially the dramatic increases in money lost. New scams targeting investments and businesses, the losses reported through bank transfers and cryptocurrency payments, and the enduring power of the telephone, and the more recent power of social media to conduct fraud. Our speakers are Maria Mayo, Acting Associate Director for the Division of Consumer Response and Operations in the Bureau of Consumer Protection, Federal Trade Commission. And we start with Maria Mayo, who will lead us off. Thank you, Ms. Mayo. We're looking forward to hearing your report.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this event. So the FTC's mission is to protect consumers from fraud, deception, and unfair business practices. The first step in doing that is actually hearing from consumers, and we hear from millions of people every year. They report to us the problems they experience in the marketplace, like fraud, identity theft, and other consumer protection problems. Sometimes they lost money, sometimes they didn't, sometimes they just wanted to warn other people about what happened to them. All of the reports we receive at the FTC and reports we receive from other sources are entered into a law enforcement database known as the Consumer Sentinel Network. The annual Sentinel Data Book provides aggregated data on all of the reports received from the previous year. And today I'd like to talk about some of the interesting highlights in the 2022 data. So first, we saw a decrease in the number of fraud reports received compared to 2021. In 2022, we received 2.4 million fraud reports compared to 2.9 fraud reports received the year before. So that's about a 500,000 decrease in the number of fraud reports that we received. But in spite of that decrease, the dollar loss reported was staggering. Consumers reported that they lost more than $8.8 billion to fraudsters, the most ever reported. And you're probably wondering, what were the frauds that consumers lost the most money to? What contributed to this huge monetary loss? There were two main fraud categories where consumers reported losing the most money: investment scams and imposter scams. And I'll start with investment scams because consumers reported losing money to investment scams more than any other type of scam. And the amount lost in 2022 more than doubled what was lost in 2021. Consumers reported losing $3.8 billion in investment scams, most of which were lost to cryptocurrency scams. And the average median loss per consumer was $5,000. These scams often started on social media, where consumers were enticed to invest in cryptocurrency in an attempt to make money. Consumers invested, and the scammers were so savvy that they often presented websites that actually showed how the consumer's money had grown, but it was all fake. And that's just one example of an investment scam. Imposter scams accounted for the next largest dollar loss, with consumers reporting losses of $2.6 billion. But I do want to unpack that a little bit because under the umbrella of imposter fraud, there are several subcategories. Imposter fraud is when someone pretends to be a well-known business, which we refer to as a business imposter scam. It could be someone pretending to be a government agency, which we refer to as a government imposter scam. It could be someone pretending to be a romantic interest, and we refer to those as romance scams. Or it could even be someone pretending to be a friend or a family relative. All of this in an attempt to get money or personal information. Losses to business imposters soared in 2022 compared to 2021. Consumers reported losing $660 million to business imposters compared to $450 million the year before. Romance scams where someone is pretending to be a love interest was another driver for the huge dollar loss as it relates to imposter scams. Consumers reported losing $496 million to romance scams with an individual median loss of $2,000. And even though reports regarding government imposters were actually down in 2022, the median loss per consumer actually increased. So in 2022, the average consumer lost $1,500 to a government imposter compared to those who lost $1,100 in 2021. So those two areas combined accounted for more than 70% or $6.4 billion of the total dollar loss reported of $8.8 billion. Those are the reports based on the dollar amounts lost, but what types of frauds were reported the most? I'll mention the top 5 frauds. Once again, imposter scams top the list as the most reported fraud type. We received more than 725,000 reports about imposter scams, and more than half of those reports were about business imposter scams. And in most of the reports regarding business imposter scams, consumers indicated that the scammer was pretending to be Amazon. Second on the fraud list was online shopping. We started to see an increase with this type of fraud during the height of the COVID pandemic. And it continues to be one of the top reported scams, with consumers often reporting about not receiving merchandise that they ordered. 2022 data shows us that most of these scams actually started on social media. Third on the list are scams related to prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries. And these are scams when consumers often receive a call from someone claiming that they won a huge sum of money, usually in a sweepstakes, but they have to pay a fee in order to get that money. And consumers who reported that particular scam indicated that totally they lost more than $301 million to those scammers. Fourth on the list is investor-related scams. And I talked about how consumers lost money to this scam more than any other, but the number of reports regarding this scam increased as well. So last year, it was number 7 on the list with more than 80,000 reports. But this year, it moved up to the fourth slot with the most reported scam of more than 100,000 reports. And rounding off the top 5 are business and job opportunity scams. We've been taking a closer look at job opportunity scams most recently, especially because once a consumer realizes that it is indeed a scam, they're really concerned about the amount of personal data that they have disclosed when applying for this so-called job. We also collect data on how scammers contact consumers. Phone calls has historically been the number one way that scammers reach out to consumers, but it actually decreased in 2022. But in spite of that, on an individual level, consumers reported a median loss of $1,400 compared to $1,200 the year before. Social media was a contact method that had the highest aggregated dollar loss, with $1.2 billion. So if a fraud was instigated through a social media platform, that is where consumers lost the most money. And the top 5 categories where consumers got involved in a scam through social media were online shopping, investments, and business imposters.
Maria, a question is, can you say again, what was the 4th most popular scam?
The fourth,
and the 4th, one of our reporters missed what the 4th was.
Sure. The fourth most popular scam was investment scam.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. In 2022, 1 out of every 4 persons who reported a fraud also reported losing money. And we track trends on how consumers are paying scammers. Bank transfers or payments accounted for the highest dollar losses among payment methods, with more than $1.5 billion in losses reported. And the top fraud categories for that payment method was online shopping, followed by business imposters. Cryptocurrency was the second highest payment method, with more than $1.4 billion in losses reported. What's also interesting is the impact of fraud on different age groups. So the data tells us that younger people, specifically those in the 30 to 39 age range, reported losing money more often than older adults. and they lost money more frequently to online shopping scams and investment scams. And they were usually contacted by those scammers through social media. And they most often paid the scammer using credit cards. But when older adults did report, and by older adults, I mean those 80 or older, they lost money more than anyone else. Usually about $1,600 was the median loss. And older adults usually lost money to business imposter scams and tech support scams. And those scams were usually initiated through phone calls. So those are the highlights for the 2022 data in our Sentinel data book. Fraud reports are down, but people lost a lot of money to scammers to the tune of $8.8 billion, with most of the money being lost in investment and imposter scams. Social media is increasingly being used to lure consumers into frauds, and consumers are paying scammers most frequently using bank payments or cryptocurrency. And I'll stop now in case there are any questions. I think educating consumers on what to look for with scams, and I think my colleagues at, excuse me, my colleagues in the Division of Consumer and Business Education do a great job with that, with their blog posts, with their educational materials, events like these, with reporters and getting information out. One of the things that with consumers, if you're getting text or calls from scammers, more than likely someone that you know is receiving the same type of texts and scams, and talking about that and talking it over and making people aware of what you're experiencing and sharing that experience, I think is a good way in helping to prevent some of these scams and frauds that are happening. And also encouraging people, as Rosario mentioned, looking at some of the payment methods that scammers are asking folks to pay them with, gift cards, cryptocurrency, just to be cautious of that. And that also comes in education, and DCB is doing a great job of getting the word out regarding that.
Great. Rosario, any thoughts about where you feel you're making progress and where we can be most helpful?
Yes, I think we're definitely making progress by having these conversations. I mean, I see the reports after we have these briefings, and we, and it's incredible the reach that you all have, and we'll continue, supporting that through these briefings and giving interviews and anywhere else that we can. I think it's really, really important to emphasize the importance of reporting fraud to the Federal Trade Commission, because that is the way that we have to know what is happening in the community, so that we can establish those cases that I talk about, for example, like the Moda Latina case and all these other cases, because those reports really give us information so that the attorneys and the investigators can, look into these problems. And if there's not a case that we can establish specifically, at least it also serves us in the Division of Consumer and Business Education to alert people about trends and alert people about the things that are happening in the community. So,
okay, that was the Ethnic Media Services Forum with the Federal Trade Commission last month regarding the situation on the extent of scamming here in the U.S. So thank you so much, Sandy Close, the Executive Director of EMS, as well as Ms. Rosario Mendez for sharing during that forum, and especially the FTC, which is the vanguard of consumers' rights and protection. So one has to report a scam. You have to contact the FTC. You can check the website at www.ftc.gov or go to your local media to report what has happened to you. And the report of the FTC has outlined the different kinds of scams that's been usually done on the social media platform. These are investment scams, imposter scams, and online shopping scams. So you have to be very aware of that, be conscious of that, because our hard-earned money is ours for us to keep, so you don't give that away to scammers. So let me just summarize what has been reported by the Federal Trade Commission, that there was a drop in the overall reports of scams and frauds, but the total amount was still staggering at 8.8 billion. Actually, the drop of the number of scams have been noted, but the amount of the value of the scammed money has reached higher costs at 8.8 billion. Now, with a forum of EMS, the FTC revealed the top 5 scams of 2022 and their economic impact. These are imposter fraud, people who are posing as government entities, tech support, or business interests, and online shopping remained the top 2 frauds. Investor fraud sucked the most money out of consumers, almost 3.8 billion, with majority in cryptocurrencies. And it's interesting to know from Commissioner Mayo that the younger people, ages 30 to 39, are the ones being victimized by online shopping fraud. And the older people, they're likely victimized on the investment fraud, which included cryptocurrency scams. So consumers reported losing $660 million to business imposters, compared to 450 million in 2021. So this is important that scammers have to be reported. Another guest, Attorney Rosario Mendez of the Division of Consumer and Business Education of FTC, mentioned that scammers are targeting ethnic communities, especially when they speak your language, Latino or Filipino or any other language. They know the business of making you believe that they are legit. So the FTC also has a language, an interpretation of language, so that they would be of better service to the community. So that's it. You have to wisen up, and if it doesn't feel kind of good, it shouldn't be good. So report the scam. Go to the specific tips on how to report a scam on this website, www.bulkorder.ftc.gov/publications. Spotting, avoiding, reporting scams, fraud handbook, especially for recent refugees and immigrants. So take note of that, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your hard-earned money to yourself and report a scam. Avoid it as much as you can. So thank you, Sandy Close and FTC for that great public service. So that's it for today, and hope you will enjoy your week and live a happy life.
As moving slowly, making the scene. Pay attention if you know what I mean. Call your mama and your papa too. Hold on tight, them will make some ass monkeys. Ass monkeys for you. Ass monkeys. Ass monkeys, yeah. Ass monkeys gonna give it to you.
Yeah.